I heartily welcome you. Good morning, and I hope I can provide some interesting thoughts and views on the Bulgarian experience in the context of this very broad topic of preserving national identity and heritage while moving towards a more unified Europe. Before I move to as a keynote speaker, I have prepared 3 keynotes, which I'll sing to you. And then perhaps we can exchange some questions and answers. But before I proceed with my notes, I would like to salute, truly, the efforts of the ICD. Why? Because it is making us think and talk about culture. And culture, I don't have to convince you, I suppose, is essential. It is essential because without culture, no major project will succeed, be it national or European, for that matter. Because basically culture, if you take away everything, is all that is worth living for. That is something that goes deep into our hearts, minds, beings as human, part of a society. It is about our daily interaction, be it inside the society, inside a collectivity, or with other societies, with other cultures. By the way, I was tempted to read something which I received yesterday. It is an invitation to the China International Cultural Fair. And they invite us and tell us Chinese culture and logic are quite different from that of foreign countries, so that it's always hard for foreigners to understand what we are doing now and expect what we will be doing in the future. Chinese seems to be very different from foreigners forever. Some people are even scared about fast development in China. After participating in our exposition, you will get an absolutely clear idea of Chinese culture and society development direction. Well, I think that is goes too far, but I hope after my intervention you have not an absolutely clear idea of Bulgaria and its efforts, but at least you will have some idea of Bulgaria and its efforts. So, to conclude my introductory remarks, it is good that we talk about culture. It is important to put culture in the mainstream and at the top of the agenda. By the way, the crisis that we're going through is not just a financial and economic crisis. It's much more than that. It goes deeper and wider. And in order to pull ourselves out of it, I think culture needs to be mainstreamed even more. And unfortunately, that is not really the case up till now. If you look at the money that's been foreseen for the next budget, you'll see that the programs that involve culture have been cut. So, I will make, as I said, 3 keynotes. I will spell them out or sing them out immediately so you can sit back and relax afterwards. The first point that I will focus on and say a few things about is a portrait of Bulgaria, its cultural heritage, and my work as ambassador on this score. The second point would be, what does EU membership mean for Bulgaria? How does it affect us? Point number 3 is culture as a factor for economic growth and job creation as an anti-crisis measure. Because after all, culture, it has an intrinsic value, but it's much more than that. It has material and intangible effects on society and development. And finally, to follow the classic structure, I'll have concluding remarks. So, Bulgaria. I know there are people in this room who know Bulgaria quite well and know the culture of Bulgaria quite well. And I'm honored with their presence, and I'm even more honored by the fact that they have fallen in love with Bulgaria and worked with Bulgaria on culture. Because culture in Bulgaria, Bulgaria's cultural heritage, historical heritage, is quite diverse and quite rich. There was an exhibition in the European Parliament just a few years ago showing some of the gold treasures that have been found in Bulgaria. And we're talking about exquisite jewelry, ornaments going back 2,500 years ago. And during that exhibition, the guest of honor, the President of the European Parliament, Jerzy Buzek, said something which is extremely important, and basically he puts in a nutshell what I'm going to say in many words just now. He said, in a few years, the crisis will be gone, and we will not remember it. What we'll remember, that Bulgaria was at the heart of European culture 2,500 years ago, and it has a rich culture. And I think that is all we have to say about culture, the importance of culture. It is a rich country, Bulgarian cultural terms, not in others, unfortunately, or hopefully we'll change that in the near future, but for the time being, this richness of culture comes as I think of it as in terms of life jacket for Bulgaria in these times of difficulty. This life jacket culture keeps Bulgaria afloat. It gives the population the strength to persevere. It also gives the nation a face that is appreciated by the outside world, by our friends and partners. Because our image, unfortunately, is not the best that you can have. Bulgaria is not, unfortunately, linked to many positive things. It is more associated with negative things, unfortunately. I'm not going to hide it. I mean, I see it on a daily basis. I see the problems, but I also see that there are people in Belgium, in Luxembourg, and elsewhere who somehow magically tend to turn a blind eye to the problems and the negative aspects and see only the beauty of Bulgaria, of its culture and its people. And that is, for me, more important because it is the avenue for a future which will be better for Bulgaria in all respects. And Bulgaria is known through a very, how should I say, a very convincing export product. And that it's its heritage and it is its culture. My work as an ambassador here, if I look at it, the empirical data that comes from it, 80% of what I'm doing with Belgium is culture. Why? Because economy somehow has gone back, there is not enough potential, or the focus is more towards China. and the Far East. I think I'll try and change that as well, because it's an important facet, an important side of our relationship with the countries that I'm accredited to. But culture is high on my agenda, on my sort of daily work is linked to culture. We're organizing concerts in Bulgaria, we're organizing concerts in Belgium. There are tours of choirs, boys' choirs in Bulgaria, there are respective choirs coming to Belgium. There are film festivals. Yesterday we had another offer from a Belgian producer. Next year there will be a film festival with focus on Bulgarian cinema and so on and so forth. So it is the bread of my work at present. And this is very satisfying, I can tell you. It's much more satisfying than many other things that I have to do. It is enriching to deal with people from the cultural sector because they're more at ease, they're more fun usually, and it's much more rewarding to talk to them. With no disrespect to our formal, equally important contacts. But this is a part of a facet of my diplomatic work, the cultural diplomacy, which has indeed a very high quotient of feel-goodness. You feel good. You're doing something important and you feel good about it and you enjoy it. Plus, you get to meet many artists and many important people in this field, which otherwise you would not. So there are many benefits for diplomats. I think we have our benefits as well to offer to the artistic people with the knowledge of the situation, of moods, of giving some advice as far as organization is concerned. So I think it's a mutually enriching. This is probably my formal authority saying, why did you say that? But I'll switch it off. Sorry.
We are broadcasting now in Bulgarian national TV.
Oh, well, we'll see. I will be back in Sofia for an ambassadors conference in a few weeks. I'll probably learn more about it. Where was I? I was saying about the contacts with the people from the artistic world. It is very, very, very pleasant, I must admit. And here I have asked the person behind this name, Mr. Gubel, who is involved in cultural projects in Bulgaria, who has come up with a wonderful name for this non-profit organization. It's called Fusion Embassy. And I would be extremely satisfied if my embassy is seen as fused to culture and helping culture. That is what I can say. When I say culture and life jacket and so on and so forth, please don't get me wrong. I'm not exaggerating the role of culture. It is one important facet of work, one important line of working on the image of Bulgaria, one important line of working on the relations between Bulgaria and Belgium. Culture cannot be a substitute to a sound policy in other fields. Culture is not a panacea. You can present culture, but if the country is not doing well in other fields, it cannot cope with such a burden, culture. But it is important that it gives you breathing space, it gives you a place at the table, it gives you something to offer in a time of hardship. That's my point. And it will continue to be a very important item on my agenda. with culture, what we're actually doing is creating this favorable environment for Bulgaria, for its economy, for its entrepreneurs, for its tourism, for its investments, and so on and so forth. So it cannot be underestimated as an element of our overall work. Plus, culture is not, we're just dishing out Bulgarian culture. Culture is about exchange of ideas. Culture is about bringing in what is good, and you have not really thought of it. Culture is about, this cultural exchange is about creating a context in which you can better judge your own culture. Through the eyes of outsiders, sometimes it's easier for them to tell you what is good and where to focus, and that you do not appreciate enough this and this. Why? Because you're stuck in it. You're soaked in this culture, and you tend to take it as a given. It's there. I mean, there was a Belgian investor the other day who was saying, and can you imagine in Bulgaria, 80% of the agricultural produce is bio products, and they don't even put bio on the labels. And this is what I mean. I mean, somebody comes and tells you, listen, you're losing money. You're not using, to the extent possible, your potential. So this cultural interaction is of extremely high importance. And we change. I mean, your national identity, this concept, your national identity is not a static concept. It's not a static category. It's a dynamic one. It changes. It evolves, hopefully for the better. So this is again, a very, very important line, because it brings contact, it builds bridges, it brings commonality. And commonality is important. I come to my second point, that is the EU membership. I had the privilege and pleasure to be involved from day one with Bulgaria's accession to the EU. That goes to 1994, when I joined our EU efforts. So I have seen the whole process. I've seen the start of negotiations. I've seen the close of negotiations. I have been to the signing of the treaty, and I have been the first PSC ambassador of Bulgaria to the EU. So I have a deep sense of gratification that I have done it. So it's a personal triumph and satisfaction, but it's a key historical achievement for my country. I would say it's a game-changing event for my country, to use this wonderful expression. The very accession to the EU was highly important, because it made us work, made us look deeper into things and broader, widen our horizon, and it did something which is very important, which I think we need another injection of such medicine currently. It made us believe that we can. As Barack Obama would say, we said it earlier, yes, we can. Because we had doubts that we could enter the EU. We had doubts that the EU wanted us in. We still have doubts that some people want us in the EU. I remember coming back from, I don't know where, from Indonesia or something, and I stepped into a taxi at Sofia Airport, and there was a safety belt in the car, which was a novelty in Bulgaria. I mean, we're immortal, we drive, and we enjoy ourselves. So I said, oh, we have safety belts now. And the guy, we don't use them, we just put them because, you know, now we're about to start negotiations with the EU, so they have many requirements. This is one that we can fulfill. I'm saying this just to illustrate the level of whether they want us, whether we can. And we managed. We managed to get in. So that gave the nation a sense of, if we do something right, we'll get there. We'll be successful. I think we have lost some of that elan and enthusiasm and belief. I hope we recover it. And culture, again, is key in nourishing such a sentiment, nourishing such a desire to succeed. So I hope that we'll move in that direction. As far as we are concerned with the question, European identity, Bulgarian identity, and how we see the relationship between the two. Is there conflict? Is there tension or something? I don't see any tension. I don't see anything. I don't see a reason why we should not remain national with an identity that has a European facet. The European facet of our identity is what unites us to everyone else in the EU. And we are very diverse. That is clear. That's absolutely clear that we're very diverse. But it doesn't mean that we cannot identify ourselves with the European project and with the EU. And I think we should be proud of that. And I'm rather worried, in fact, that some of the belief and the support for the European project is being eroded. Because now we have a change in generation. There are less and less people who remember. I don't remember the war, don't get me wrong, but the people who remember, the politicians, the war, they were more clear on their support of the EU. Now it's taken as a given. You don't realize how much it has changed Europe and how much peace and stability it has brought, and how many advantages to people, young people, old people, any people, it has brought. So I personally don't see any problem with that. I, in fact, believe that our identity, our national heritage, would be exposed to greater risk if we were outside the European Union. That is for sure. That is for sure. We would be much more fragile under different influences. Plus, at this point in time, talking about heritage, how do you preserve national heritage? By being very clear that you have to preserve it. That's the prerequisite, number one. But B, with a lot of money. You need money, whether you like it or not. Yeah, I can see that far. So you need money. And who gives the money now? We have spent over the past few years, 3 years most, over 53 million lev, that 25, 26 million euro European funds for our national heritage. Building museums, theaters, renovating, setting up archaeological sort of sites and so on and so forth. Currently, just 2 days ago, a 7,000-year-old fortress has been put on display again. 3 million euro coming from the EU. So how can we be against this European aspect? We cannot. It is life-saving. It is, just as culture is a life jacket for Bulgaria, the EU funding is a life jacket for Bulgarian culture. So we are happy and proud to be part of Europe, and we believe that we brought a lot to the EU, plus an alphabet, which is on your Euro note. The Cyrillic alphabet is there. So I think the diversity of the EU has been enriched The union has been, for me, strengthened because we are pro-European, and we will stay that way. By the way, we have a famous Bulgarian professor, academic, who was part of the pan-European movement in the 1920s, Ivan Shishmanov. And in Vienna, in 1926, during one of these conferences that they held, the pan-Europeanists, he said, we must have a Europe of the hearts and minds. And I think that is still valid, what he said. Since I have 3 minutes now, the third point I wanted to make was culture as a factor for economic growth and job creation, as an anti-crisis measure. It's still underestimated, culture. It is still seen as a peripheral concern and as a sphere that just consumes. It needs subsidies, which is true that it needs support because people of culture, those who are dealing with it, need to eat and to create. But after all, creativity, which is linked to culture, creativity is the main economic asset. You have to nurture this asset. You have to take care. Why? Because it, apart from its intrinsic value, it has its own economic effects which are beneficial for the country. And if you look at the figures, the cultural sector has scored a growth which is above the average for the other sectors in the times of crisis. I spoke to people in Bulgaria to tell me how are things going with the culture sector. They said they're doing fine. The same thing is replicated in Bulgaria. The growth is higher. And in fact, there are more, let's say, films being created, more jobs created because of this cultural activity. So it shouldn't be underestimated. Investing in culture is an investment. It's not simply a subsidy. That's my point. And we can only be happy and supportive of the intention and steps of the EU, the European Commission, to put focus on the so-called cultural and creative sectors. That is very welcome, and I hope that this continues. It has been recognized, culture, as key to the European project. If it's key, it needs to be in a key position on our agenda. And that's what we tell the Commission when our Minister of Culture was here. That's what he's saying. You need an operational program on culture. You need something dedicated to culture, not programs that, for instance, regional development, you use regional development for culture. No, have a dedicated program for culture because it is so important. And I will conclude because I have 1 minute. 1 minute, but I'm open to questions. I would like to say something at the end about our hosts. This is the mission of the Republic of Macedonia. I don't know whether they're Macedonian diplomats, no. But I've told the Macedonian ambassador what I think, so he won't be surprised. I would like to thank them for the hospitality. You know that we have some issues with our neighbors. They're probably our closest neighbor in many respects. We have some issues to deal with, and people are dealing with it. What is more important, that the contacts, people-to-people contacts, culture to culture, a cultural exchange is ongoing and very strong. There are films, Milcho Manchevski, most popular Macedonian director, that are being co-produced with Bulgaria. There are films in Macedonia that are being produced by Bulgarian companies. There are Bulgarian plays being played in Bitolia and in Skopje. Some of their best poets come to Bulgaria and ours go there and win prizes. And that is what counts. And that is a good basis to be an optimist, that everything will be fine, and two neighborly and close countries will do well in the future and will respect each other and benefit from EU membership. Here I'll stop and let you ask your questions if you have any. Thank you.